Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at 11 starts now.
A small town could soon lose its police force. A community in Livingston County is considering cutting its police department, all because of a tight budget. But residents are passionately speaking out against that plan. The alternative would be for the village of Pinkney to have the county sheriff's office take over. Thanks for joining us at 11. I'm Ty Steele.
And I'm Kimberly Gill. Tonight's town hall meeting got heated at times. Jacqueline Francis was in Pinkney from start to finish and spoke to residents who say they don't want to see their local department go.
Pinkney is a small village, a tight-knit community. You can see here the police department sharing the same building with Village Hall. And when it comes to the future of the police department here, residents feel very strongly that it stays.
Costs are going up, so we have to decide, are we willing to pay more taxes?
Can you put a dollar amount on having your own police department?
So I wouldn't want Pinkney to change for any reason.
The village of Pinkney in Livingston County, home to roughly 2,000 people, is reworking its budget. And some worry the Pinkney Police Department may not make the cut.
We have good coverage in the village by the police department being from like minutes from us, literally.
In a recent survey put out by the village, they asked residents a series of questions about the value they place on having their own police force and their thoughts on contracting out and having the county sheriff's office take over instead.
It's more than 50%, more than 2/3 of our budget go to the police. It's really the strongest area for us to look at how we can save more money, or we are looking at least a small tax hike.
The chief of police is against the move.
I have officers that this is their livelihood.
He says it's not just about his staff of 5 or so full-time officers, but it's also about safety and response time.
The fact is, they're where it's much busier, so they're not around when they're not in their contract time.
No decisions were made at tonight's town hall, but everyone that we heard from as far as residents go, they want the police department to stay put. Reporting live tonight, Jacqueline Francis, Local 4.
Really passionate people that we heard from tonight. Okay, Jacqueline, thank you.
New tonight, 2 people were killed after being hit by a driver while waiting for the bus on the west side of Detroit. This is where it happened. Police say it happened around 7 o'clock tonight at the corner of Finkel and Evergreen. Police say the driver was speeding down Evergreen when they ran into the bus stop, hitting and killing a man and a woman. After the crash, the driver continued on to a nearby gas station. That's where they were hit by another vehicle before finally coming to a stop. The female driver has been arrested, but there's no word yet on whether alcohol or drugs were a factor in that crash.
All right, getting a check on the forecast right now. Some strong storms moved through earlier tonight, bringing with them threats of flooding.
Those storms have moved out at this point, but we still have some lingering showers in the area. Ron Hilliard is tracking it all for us on this Friday evening. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ty and Kimberly, we got quite a bit of rainfall earlier. Now, we're still getting some rain, but it is not nearly as heavy as what we had with some of those thunderstorms moving through in the afternoon and evening. We, in fact, had some storms that had rainfall rates of 1 to 3 inches an hour. That's a lot, and this rain has been with us for hours. Exact Track 4D radar showing that we have that light rain that is still continuing here in Metro Detroit. We do still have some flood concerns. Now, the flash flood warnings that we had earlier this evening, those are no longer in effect. But because of all the rain that we've picked up, anywhere from 1 to even 4 inches of rain in our northern suburbs, we still have some flood concerns. Right now, a flood advisory continues for Oakland and Macomb counties until almost midnight tonight. If you are encountering some of these roadways that have water over them, make sure that you turn around and don't try to pass through them. I'll have the latest on what we can expect for the rest of the night, as well as the weekend coming up. Ty and Kimberly.
All right, Ron, thank you. President Trump's emergency management officials are discussing reforms that would make it much harder for communities to qualify for federal disaster assistance. This honors the president's executive order to shift more responsibility for disaster response and recovery to states rather than the federal government. This comes as places like northern Michigan and Arkansas are fighting to get aid after severe weather devastated communities in both of those states. Joining us tonight is Mark Nouveau, a former FEMA presidential appointee. Mark actually coordinated efforts here in Michigan after flooding in 2013 under then President Barack Obama. Thanks for joining us, Mark. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ty.
Good to have you. First off, break this down for us. It's pretty complicated. How would these changes affect how FEMA operates and how states like Michigan get help from the agency?
Yeah, it is a complicated situation, but what the president wants to do is try and streamline how money is allocated to states for recovery. Now, we got to break it down into two segments, one being response. So when FEMA comes into play in a disaster, they bring in urban search and rescue teams, disaster medical assistance teams, disaster mortuary teams, urban search and rescue, water rescue, etc. And so that's one component. They're talking about moving that under the National Security Council at the White House, but they're also talking about revamping the grant programs for recovery.
Okay, so what stage are we at? Are these changes already in motion or just FEMA talking with the White House and the Trump administration at this point?
Yeah, I wish it was just discussion, but they're moving down the path pretty quickly. And I think the changes can be beneficial. It's dependent upon how they do that, right? The proof is in the pudding. And so as they move through here, what they're talking about is having each state have to qualify to meet a standard to be able to get federal assistance. That meaning, for instance, in 2023, Michigan had flooding for 9 counties, and the federal government provided $103 million for people to be able to find, rental assistance, to rebuild their homes, child care, things of that nature. So the question will be, does Michigan have the capability to handle that on their own, or do they need the federal government's involvement?
Well, and speaking of that, critics say this plan shifts too much responsibility onto the states and those potentially struggling budgets in the future. What's your assessment of that?
Well, it depends upon which state you come from. If you look at California, for instance, they're the 4th largest economy in the world. So they have a tremendous amount of resources available. Conversely, you look at some of the smaller states, South Dakota, that have a population of 1 million. So it depends upon which state and what capabilities they already have existing. But what we do know is they've got to be very careful about how they do this, because Mother Nature is going to continue to provide storm damage, as we've heard from Ron just a few moments ago. And so the potential is, if you move too quick and you don't have resources available to help people when they need it, then the improvements certainly aren't going to be advantageous.
Right. We know these storms and these disasters aren't going to stop anytime soon. So what happens if a state doesn't have the disaster response funding to deal with these kind of disasters? Are they just out of luck?
Well, that's the question mark for many states. And I think governors are already in the position that they're going to have to think about, when we put reserve budgets aside, we're going to have to increase that amount of money, not knowing how this is going to play out. But we do know that 22 states have already filed suit regarding federal funding and the withdrawal of that funding. Although it doesn't apply necessarily to disaster funding, there are implications about what authority the presidential administration has to be able to make changes. I think this can be a good thing if it's done the right way.
All right, Mark Nouveau, former presidential appointee, a lot of moving parts here, a lot of things that could and might not happen. So thanks for helping us understand it to this point. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ty. Have a good evening.
Detroit City Council member Gabriela Santiago Romero is suing City Clerk Janice Winfrey and the Detroit Election Commission. The District 6 representative claims a clerical error at the county clerk's office led to her being disqualified from the August primary ballot. The issue centers around a campaign finance report that Santiago Romero's team says they submitted on time. But this week she received a call from the clerk's office telling her she was disqualified due to an unpaid late fee. Despite all of this, Santiago Romero says her campaign will still happen.
It is a shame that we have to fight to remain on the ballots because the county has failed. And I'm going to need everyone's help to make sure that we run a strong write-in people's campaign. We can do hard things. We can run a successful people's campaign no matter how long my name is. But it shouldn't have to come to that.
We reached out to the Wayne County Clerk's office for their side of the story. However, they have not made a comment, they say, due to the potential litigation. We are just days away from a trial that's been 3 years in the making. Monday, former police officer Christopher Schur will face a jury that will decide if he's guilty of second-degree murder. Schur is charged with killing Patrick Leoya during a traffic stop in Grand Rapids back in 2022. He claims The killing was in self-defense, saying Leoya was reaching for his taser. About 200 prospective jurors were called for this trial, and after days of questioning, the final jury was seated yesterday. It's made up of 10 women and 4 men. Beginning Monday, we'll be streaming the trial live on Local 4 Plus and clickondetroit.com. Our coverage begins Monday at 9 a.m.
An Oakland County doctor is facing serious accusations of abusing and recording patients for years. Now he will be going to trial. Omer Ajayaz is accused of placing cameras in changing rooms at hospitals and even at a swim school. Police say when Ajayaz was arrested, they seized several electronic devices that contain more than 13,000 videos that he recorded over the years. Today, a judge reviewed the evidence and determined there was enough evidence to bound him over to trial. A date has not been set for his pretrial hearing.
The Trump administration is looking into cutting the 988 suicide prevention and crisis lifelines services for the LGBTQ plus community. According to CNN, the cuts were outlines of a leaked budget draft. The proposal pushes for slashing overall health spending and a reconstruction of health agencies. According to advocacy groups, if enacted, services would be terminated sometime in October. Well, leaders from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention said in a statement, quote, "We urge the administration to continue its existing support for crisis services, including those for at-risk LGBTQ plus youth. These crisis response services are effective and save young lives."